If you love getting super curious about your relationship with money, the energetics of money, and to go on that journey of reshaping and rewiring the beliefs and the narratives that you have around money, this is going to be a beautiful conversation with you. I am sitting down with Sarah Penfold, a financial wellness coach, and we really dive into the energetics of money, the stories that come up with money, the avoidance around money. And one of the really powerful things taking away from this conversation is the difference between the financial institution and money. So let's dive in. When you go beyond the surface and into the depths of who you truly are, you will rise. Well, first and foremost, welcome back to the podcast. And Sarah, welcome to the podcast. I'm so grateful and I'm excited to have you, excited to dive into all things money today with you.
Thanks so much for having me, Ashley. It's great to be here.
So I'm actually really curious, just to start with, like, your experience and journey with money? Like, what does that look like? What got you into like doing the work that you do now?
Yeah, so Sarah's origin story. I hope that it's relatable because I didn't come from money. I was born and raised on a farm for about the first 7 years of my life. And I had kind of I think, typical relationship with money, in the sense that I didn't learn it until my mid 40s. And so I was in considerable discomfort around my finances for probably about 10 years, really the 5 years prior to me getting the support and like changing things. And at that point, I had tried a bunch of different things. I had tried, going full woo. I hired someone to do, the mantras and the affirmations and the writing. And I don't want to diss that because I think it can be a really important part, but when you're doing it in isolation, it's not a holistic approach to healing your money relationship. And then I hired someone to just help me with a system to like help me get a structure in place. And what I didn't realize, because that didn't work either, what I didn't realize and the piece that was missing was that I was getting in my own way and I needed someone to kind of hold my hand and guide me through getting out of my own way and really kind of like just have a structure and a format. And that's what I have learned I really thrive in. So I found my mentor. I worked with her for 3 months, and at the end of that 3 months, it was like, I am not done with this work. Like there's something here. This is cool stuff, because I felt so different. I couldn't believe how much lighter I felt in my body after that 3 months. There was just so much stress and overwhelm and shame that just vanished. And I knew it was there, but I didn't know how much. And I didn't know how, because I had never had the experience of having a good relationship with money. I didn't know how it would feel. And I was like, I want more people to feel like this.
Yeah.
And so I worked in my mentor's program with her for a couple of years, supporting her program, teaching with her, and then just wanted to do my own thing, my own way. So here I am, just over 2 years into running my own business.
I love that.
Yeah.
What did that look like specifically, I guess, like in, I guess, the thick of it? And I really do love that you say, I feel like my brain starts to go into kind of like the feminine masculine approach and just how
Mm-hmm.
everything literally needs both having the structure, but then also being able to have like the gentleness and the softness of the feminine. And I'm curious, like, what did that actually look like for you to get out of your own way? What was that for you?
There was a couple things. One is actually looking at my history. So all of the places that I remember having significant memories with money, understanding my familial history. So I've talked about this quite a bit because the farming lineage in my father's side goes way back, like multiple generations. And there is a way of being in the farming community where you physically work hard for the money that you bring in.
Yeah.
And so subconsciously, and I didn't realize until my mentor kind of like, it was right there in front of me and she showed it to me. And I had this belief that for me to make more money, I physically had to work harder And that felt exhausting. And so there was a part of me that was protecting my energy. Like, no, no, stay small, just be happy with what you have.
Mm.
When I recognized that and recognized it wasn't mine, that it was from this lineage, I was able to just relate to it differently. Not that it doesn't still come up, but it's like the volume goes way, way down on it. And you can see it when it comes up, like, oh, that's this thing, and I need to do things differently.
Yeah.
So those were a couple of big ones. And then I have learned the way that I need to learn that works really good for me, because I love learning and I take courses and stuff all the time. But for me to have a structure, especially when there's something that I don't know, like we're doing this week, we're doing this week, and to have that external accountability
Mm-hmm.
really, really helps me to get all the information in. And then the final piece for me undoubtedly was community and connection. And what I've learned is the way our nervous system works is we're not, despite what our culture would tell us about you can do it on your own and individualism and it's all your own responsibility. Like, we are wired to be in community and to be
Yeah.
in groups. And being in that group of hers, there was someone who was in the same situation as me. So one of the drivers for me to seek help was that I was 6 years, 7 returns behind in my taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I was gonna owe, but there was something about being delinquent, because I have a whole like good girl thing. That's a
Yeah.
whole other story. But like, it felt really uncomfortable for me to be that far behind and not up to date. So when I very like vulnerably shared that in the group, there was a woman who put up her hand and was like, oh, I'm in the same boat. And so then
Mm.
we connected offline and held each other's hand through that and did work together. So, I mean, it's a long-winded answer, and there's multiple factors that I realized that hadn't been in place before that were part of this magical program that really helped me
Yeah.
flip the switch and change my life when it came to money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say too on the community aspect piece is just how far back that goes, of just how everything was done in community. Everything was done in community.
Everything.
And, if we look at, like, I'm kind of on that cusp of the generation that knows what it's like not to have the internet and social media, and also to
Same.
grow up with it. So it's a very
Mm-hmm.
interesting dynamic to also see and recognize how there was a time when all of this existed. And I feel like, I don't like to knock fully on like social media, because there's benefits and there's pros and cons. It's just like finding that dance and
Totally.
balance between the two. But the community aspect piece is, I think, something that we forget that is so crucial to just our entire being of who we are, because it goes so far back. Even, when it came down to like so far back in the sense of just like women and their cycles, and that was all done in community. Like all of this, it's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it's powerful when you think about it, and also just liberating to know that we can come back to that piece. We can come back to community always. And the other thing that really resonated is just that piece around working hard. And I realized how that's been such a big story for me too. And the
Mm-hmm.
power in being able to recognize when it's not ours, or where that belief came from, and how it might not even necessarily be ours. And we're carrying it for, unfortunately, from our lineage. And for me, it's my mom, right? Like I watched her grow up, and I watched myself grow up in the sense that she worked 3 jobs and just to take care of me and my sisters, because she was a single mom. And it's like, you program that into your brain that, well, I need to have X job, X job, X job. And that's how I have to bring in money, by doing all these things. So it's interesting to notice. And that, I think, is so powerful, is the piece of just simply bringing the awareness of what the relationship is and what the stories are around it.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I don't think that that's talked about enough, is literally our brains have not evolved at the same pace as our society and the technology and everything. So our brains don't understand this like do it on your own lone wolf thing. And the brain still thinks, oh, if I still have to do it on my own, then I'm in danger, and that's not safe, because it was way safer to be in your group or your tribe or your community or, whatever, than it was to be on your own. And so there's a real physiological thing that we have to push through. And it's countered by this cultural narrative of, if you just work hard enough, you'll get all the things. But there's an innate wisdom in our bodies. It's like, no, I need to be with people, I need to be in community. And yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we've started to kind of touch on it, but I'd love to just maybe even dive in a little bit more of just how, maybe just in general, how like our earliest experiences with money really take shape and shape our relationship with money. And if you can speak to that.
Totally. So I kind of use the analogy of a computer. And so our base programming is installed between the ages of 0 and 8, arguably a little bit more, kind of teens. And what we learn in that first just under decade of our life, it's there. Like, it is really hard to reprogram that base programming. So what we do is we become aware of it, and kind of like I was describing with the lineage thing, we become aware of it, and we can see it when it happens, and then we can kind of circumvent our own system, by doing something different, by regulating our nervous system, and there's all kinds of stuff to do with that. But at what I always tell people is, even if you think you didn't learn anything about money from your parents, you did.
True.
Even if it was not learning about money. And so again, I'll use myself as an example. And it's been really interesting to talk to my dad about this now that I'm more comfortable talking about money, because he had the same story that I did. He was in his mid-40s when he started to take money and finance seriously as well.
Wow.
So it was interesting that and when you look at epigenetic, I mean, there's a whole thing, but like, so there's definitely a pattern there with me and my dad. But what I learned, they were very generous, my parents, in terms of what I made for my allowance. And I had to do chores to do that. So I had to work to get money. And so you can see there's a reinforcement there then right immediately of that belief. Not that that's not common, but it's just, it reinforces the belief that I have to work hard for money. And then if I wanted more than my allowance, I had to do more chores around the house. But then I was responsible for getting all my things. So if I wanted makeup, I had to spend the money that I made. If I wanted to go out with my girlfriends to the movies, it was the money that I earned with my allowance. And in a way, that was great. Like, that really set me up. When I moved out of the house, I was always the one in the roommate situation who was paying the bills and divvying up before the days of cell phones, when we had long distance bills to like divvy up. I was that person. So I was a person that did that. But what I realized, again, in unpacking my story, is that I learned how to spend, but I didn't learn how to save. And as weird as it sounds, I believe that saving is a habit that gets instilled at some point. And if it's not instilled when you're young, then you have to learn it as an adult, as weird as it sounds. And I had a coworker, now friend, and he did learn to save as a kid.
Yeah.
He had a grandfather who was a very good mentor to him. And he was able to buy his first property before he was 30 because he had that habit of saving.
Yeah.
I think, so to go back to your question about that initial programming, yeah, it's there, whether we were like actively taught or not. There's something there. And, what did we pick up? Did we have, did our parents separate when we were kids? Was there like a job loss, or like all of these kinds of things impacted us when we were a kid, and I guarantee are influencing you in some way as an adult. And if you haven't looked at them, that's also part of your money story. And I love teaching financial literacy. I love teaching people how to manage their money. And this piece of the self-awareness around money, what I call the financial EQ, I didn't coin it. I wish I did, because I think it's great.
Yeah.
But like, that is it's like the glue that holds everything else together.
Of course.
Because even once you get your management system in place, even once you learn the things, you're still going to bump up against yourself. And if you're not able to recognize when that happens, and again, like circumnavigate or like regulate or learn how to use your system, then
it's always going to
at some point, I think it's just, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's so interesting to, like just to see how our subconscious really does come and play this massive role. And I'm curious, what was it like for you, and kind of what was that journey? Because I feel like there's the piece around, and maybe like most know that it's like, okay, as soon as I become aware of the thing, great, awareness is power. And then what?
Yeah.
And then what do we do?
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what was that journey like for you to be able to start to kind of like rewire, work through those patterns that may not necessarily been healthy money relationship patterns?
Yeah. So, what I will say about the journey of creating change in your life is we usually have this peak experience, say, or this thing, the moment where we become aware or something happens and, but we know we need to make a change. And then there's like the end result that we want to get to over here. And then there's this journey to get there. And because, like I mentioned, our nervous systems get programmed, there's these default sort of reactions to things when they happen. And so just because you have this awareness doesn't mean you're right here. So the thing might happen again and you might do it and you're like, oh crap, that was the behavior again. And I did it. And oh my gosh. And what I tell people is don't give up, because that's like, it's good. It's good that you're making awareness, right? And then the next step, you might catch yourself in the middle of doing the thing and wait, hold on, like backtrack, redo. And then eventually you'll catch yourself before you do it. And then it starts to become second nature and just part of your programming. And so just to be patient with yourself throughout that journey, so much self-compassion. I am learning how to be with money differently. I am learning financial literacy. I am learning to do this. I'm learning to do that, because we forget in our world of perfectionism that we have to learn things. You don't just sit down at a piano and play a concerto.
Yeah.
You have to run the drills. You have to train your fingers. You have to, the muscle memory. And that muscle memory analogy is the same for a behavior and a response, right? We have to retrain. And so just to be so patient with yourself, and also is to not try and do too much at once, because sometimes, again, we can like overwhelm ourselves and it creates like overwhelm and stagnation, like, and then we fail and then I can't, it's not for me. So to really be patient and to recognize that you're on a journey with anything that you're changing, and especially with money. For me, the bulk of it, like what I say to people is like the bulk of my transformation happened kind of 70 to 80% in that 3 months.
Yeah.
For personal finance, I'm speaking specifically. There's a whole other thing around business finance and
Mm-hmm.
investing and everything. But for personal finance, the bulk of what I learned was done in that 3 months. And then it was like putting the things into practice, learning the monthly and annual rhythms, learning to trust myself. And that's a big piece, is like sticking to these habits and learning to trust yourself is key. And then another thing I love from, if you haven't read Atomic Habits by James Clear,
It's
so
on
great.
it's on my list. It's on my list.
It's a fantastic book, and if you have masterclass, he also does a great masterclass on it as well. But there's this thing that people believe around, if I'm going to be good with money, I have to always be good with money, and I'm always paying my bills on time, and I'm always doing this, and I'm always doing that. And the reality is, life is going to life. Something's going to trip you up, and the trick to maintaining a habit is not the consistency necessarily, but your ability to get back on the horse when things go awry, and to not let that totally dismantle all the work you've done, right? So having that tenacity and that awareness to not recognize, a trip as a failure. If you tripped up on a month, just again, self-compassion. Okay, it was just a month. I can get right back on. Like I'm working with someone right now and something separate from money. And I was doing this 21-day practice, and day 4, I totally forgot to do it. I'm like, well, damn it. I'm just going to jump back on day 5, because I know that little tidbit, right? And I'm like, this doesn't need to derail my entire practice of getting this thing figured out in the 21 days. So,
yeah, that's a very important piece, because I think that's, we're our own worst critic. I know it's so cliche to say, but can't like underline the compassion piece and the grace piece when we are actively working on changing something in our life, or just actively like working on making this change, or going through some sort of healing journey, whatever that looks like for you, whether it is money, whether it's other aspects of your life. It doesn't matter. This one moment of maybe like reverting back to your old ways doesn't define that one single moment. And I think just this piece around learning not to make that mean more than it has to mean either. It doesn't mean that
Exactly.
you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you're not equipped or you can't make this change because of one single, like minuscule
Yeah.
moment. It just seems huge for
Yeah.
us. And I
Yeah.
recognize that.
Yeah.
It feels so big for us in the moment, but in big picture, it's so minuscule. It's so
I
tiny.
know. So here's a little tidbit for you. So my lowest grade ever in my entire educational history was first year economics in university. I got a 57. I was devastated. Like I got A's and B's throughout most of my life. High school calculus struggled, but in general, I got A's and B's, and so that was like, oh wow, I'm never gonna get hired at a job. Like I went full deep dark, like total failure. And my dad, who was a prof at the time, he switched from farming and eventually got engineering and a prof. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But he was at the university and as a prof, and he said to me, Sarah, in the grand scheme of your entire life, this grade, I'm telling you, doesn't matter. When you get out and they ask where you went to school, they are not going to look at your grades. Like,
Yeah.
oh, really? Like, and I was 18 or whatever, 19 at the time. I didn't know how things worked. So
Yeah.
it was interesting. And I go back and I think about that. I tell that story a lot because I had all these assumptions about the way things worked that weren't true.
Yeah.
And so I was making that grade mean so much more than it needed to. And let me tell, I was like, we're talking puddle on the floor, devastated.
For
Yeah.
sure.
So
Well, because I think in especially growing up, our school is become such a big part of our lives. I'm not saying I'm mindful of just like it depends on kind of like how you grew up and if the grades in the school and if that was really important, then of course you're going to feel that when there is this moment. Of course you're going to feel that. But I think what's also interesting is the assumptions and how that plays such a big role in everything too, because a lot of the times we are constantly making these assumptions. We're constantly in this, like, I call it the spiral of just being in this unknown spiral. And that's what often creates so many more stories, so many more fears that don't even have to be there once we face the thing. It's even just the simple thing around for me and talking about money. It's like I notice periods of time where I'm not looking at my money. And I think that that's going to solve something for some reason. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that in the sense of like they just don't look at their money, right? Like don't look at what's in
that
your
was me.
account. Like
Yep.
just don't look and it's going to
Yep.
go away. No, it's not.
Yep.
It's not going anywhere. So no matter how uncomfortable it is, I think that's been my one kind of like practice of just my own relationship is just constantly looking at my money on a weekly
Yeah.
basis, just getting into
Yeah.
practice with that. Because I also grew up in the sense of not having maybe conversations around money. And that has taught me about money that is just very secretive.
Yeah.
And so just being able to
Totally. Oh
that
my gosh.
is such a wild piece, right? It's just like we don't talk about it. And especially, I was very sheltered in the sense that I was the baby of the family. So, on top of all of that, very sheltered, very no conversations being had up around me. And so, and I imagine if I were to put me and my sisters all in the same room, we all equally have our own different relationship with money for sure. Because my experience growing up is going to be very different from even my older sister because she would have probably her and my mom probably would have had more of those conversations. So it's just interesting to also acknowledge that as well. Just looking at these little things and the little things that we can do can make such a difference just to build this relationship with money. The one thing I've kind of learned along
Yeah.
the way was just like looking at money as your best friend and just if you like neglecting you wouldn't neglect your best friend. And so just building this relationship is also a piece around just that energy of money of just being able to look at it all the time and be excited
Totally.
with it. So that's kind of been my own little like very small journey of just the simple little piece around changing that relationship is kind of like the starting point.
You touched on so many gems there. I was making notes. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to talk about this. The relationship piece is key for me. And one of the exercises I do in my program is I have people kind of do a writing inquiry around if money was a person, how are you treating it? And so before I actually even say to that part to them, I ask, what is your current relationship with money? Like, do you ignore it? Do you not look at it? Super common, right? Lots of people have that fear of not looking. Do you kind of abuse it in the sense that you're overspending beyond what you're making? So you're kind of disrespecting it that way. Are you hoarding it? Are you not, like, are you, yeah, not sharing with your community? Are you not donating? Are you afraid to spend? That's a real
Yeah.
thing too. And then I ask the question, okay, so if you think of your best friend or someone you're super close to in life, how do you treat them that way? Do you ignore them? Do you take more energy from them than you give back? And it can be really confronting, right? Because I really believe that our relationship with money is part of our overall well-being and ultimately part of our relationship with ourselves. And people talk a lot about the energy of money, and the simplest way I have been able to like really kind of bring it to like the here and now is that we do a job, we work, whether it's going to work for someone else and getting a paycheck, or we have our own business, and the money that comes in is the value of our energy that we put out into the world. And we can get into the nitty-gritty of like how you value yourself and
Mm-hmm.
the money that you're willing to accept. Like, that's a whole nother discussion. But just for the simplicity of this discussion, like, the money that you make is your that exchange for what you put out. And then what happens to that money is still you, right? So again, another exercise is if you review your bills and you look at where your money is going in the world, does that reflect your values? And are you happy about where things are going? So then it gets into this whole deeper discussion around like this money is a part of you thing. And that can
Mm-hmm.
kind of ease people into the piece around the self-care and looking. And so I often reference this quote that I heard way before I even started my journey. And I knew it was true, but I didn't understand the how to make it happen. And it was that living within your means is an act of self-love.
Mm-hmm.
Because so much of what we get thrown at us for marketing is, oh, you deserve it, girl.
Yep.
Just buy the thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is so dangerous because it is not self-care to, buy that face mask or buy that hair thing if we are $10,000 in debt and not looking at our money. Like, that is not self-care. That's actually self-soothing, negative self-soothing, and it's avoidant.
Yeah.
And that can be a tough one for people to acknowledge,
Even
right? That nuance of proper self-care and self-soothing.
and even especially
Yeah.
as speaking for people that are in business, right? The aspect of investing in ourselves is a big piece too. And of course, I'm such a believer in having the mentors, right? That's such a beautiful
Yeah.
piece of this, to be able to learn from someone and in a sense, like, kind of not, we still have to go through our own journey, but at least we can learn some tools along the way that might cut that journey in half. Not necessarily, but we're still going to go through it. But you know what I mean? Like, just the
Totally.
piece around
Yep.
investing and being able to just have these answers quicker by people who've done it. We have to be very mindful of the industry of personal development is beautiful, and also prying on our areas where we feel lack.
I am so happy you said that.
I'm always a
Yeah,
little,
I
I'm like,
could not agree more.
ugh, do we?
No, let's call it out. Let's call it out because I see three areas where people are constantly targeted for pain points and get trapped in these coaching programs. Because I agree with you that investing in yourself can be incredibly valuable. And I believe that has been like that line has been kind of warped and is now predatory in the coaching industry. And so the three areas that I see people getting targeted and losing money is weight, money, and love. like
Yeah.
relationships, because those are three big pain points, right? We want to be in love, we want to be wealthy and be out of that financial pain, and we want to feel great in our bodies. And if anyone is out there promising you just do this one thing and you'll be good, turn and run. Please save your money, turn and run. And I have fallen prey to this
Me
as well.
too. Me too.
And yeah, and what I will say is, I referenced earlier that I kind of need a method and a
Mm-hmm.
process to be taken through. And so that is now a question that I ask anyone that I'm going to
Nice.
invest in. What's your method?
Yeah.
What's your method? And if they say anything like, oh, I just take it call by call, or I'm just intuitive and I deal with it in the moment, again, turn and run. And I don't want to diss, because I think there are some really beautiful, skilled channelers and intuitives out there.
Yeah.
But my other rule is that I follow someone for 6 months now before I buy from them. And because I want to feel them out. And there's definitely been people that I have been, month 3 or month 4, oh, heck no, like,
Yeah.
you did
Yeah.
something and then, like, that is not cool with me. And or do a small investment with them. Like, there was a woman I was following, she's in the money realm, BIPOC woman, totally want to support that. Like, any non-white man in the finance space, I want to support.
Yep.
And I did a low ticket offer with her, and I got in, and I was so upset because the offering was learn my investing. And I was still at, like, the beginning of my learning about investing journey, and I still am. It's a whole field of finance that's like, it's like a specialty, in medicine.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
talk about the world of finance, like the world of medicine. Like, I'm a GP, right? Like, I
It's
don't
true
come to me if
though.
you need surgery.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Yeah. So not one person in the medical industry knows all the medical things, and not one person in the personal finance industry knows all the money things. So, but anyway, I got into this program, and her pitch ended up being, the way you make more money is to start your own coaching program. And I'm like, what? You teach investing? What the fresh fuck is it? Sorry, I don't know.
It's
I'm allowed to
okay.
swear
All
on this
good.
podcast.
All
But,
good.
like, what the hell? And I felt so jaded, and it was only $100, but like, that's what I mean by low ticket. Like test them out before you drop a lot of money. But yeah, there's scams all over the place. And so, um, yeah, I kind of built what worked for me, for sure, and
Yeah.
what felt good for me. So yeah, like, my programs are structured
I
and
think that
paced,
it's
and
the powerful
yeah.
thing here is that you found what works for you and you trust yourself
Mm-hmm.
in that.
Mm-hmm.
And to those that tune in and listen to this, it's not necessarily that that's going to be everyone's process, that you're like, no, I
Totally.
gotta follow them for 6 months and I got to do the low ticket. It's not a
Yes.
black, it's not black and white. It's very different. I've invested in programs from following someone for a very short amount of time and felt so good in what I invested in. And I think it's just, for me at least, the underlining bottom line in all of it is trust, and trust in ourselves,
Yes.
no matter
Yeah.
what. And I'm telling, like, for the last like 2 years, I was very actively in a space of just not investing. And it was a very intentional place for me to be in, to really go inward. And instead of just giving up my power, it was a very like intentional journey for me of just don't give up your power. And instead, when things arise, instead of trying to look outwardly to find a solution, you have all the answers inside of you. So that was the
Totally.
focus for me, was just find these answers here. And then of course, like, I started, what I want to say is that in the last 6 months, I have made like three, now four really good investments. And oh my gosh, they are just like beautifully aligned and so intentional. And it's just, there's such a deep level of trust. And also just being able to, sometimes my decisions are going to be super quick. And then other times it's like, we're going to kind of coast and we're going to feel it out. And that's just how it is. And you kind of have to find what works for you. But I think they just being so
Yeah.
mindful of just that area of lack that is constantly portrayed. And there was a marketing piece too, was just pain point, speak on the pain point, speak on the pain. Like,
Totally.
that's not what people are looking for anymore, you
Yeah.
know? And I
Yeah.
think it's just really
There's
important
been
to
a
check
shift
in.
for sure.
Yeah, there has. And I'm glad.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And I'm glad you said that because I you're right about the process and the journey. Like this is the journey I'm in right now about vetting who I work for because I
Yeah.
have this timeline and that might shift, right?
Yeah.
Do you know someone who's been through it? Do you know you want to work on something and suddenly someone comes in and it feels really aligned and you connect with them on the phone? Like whatever it is, just make sure you're doing diligence and discernment about are you just trying to get out of pain.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of at the key of it because if that's the case, then you're kind of good prey in the market
Mm-hmm. And it's not
if
going
you're
to
just
end up
wanting to get
being the
out.
experience that you want, right? I think something that I learned a little while ago was just, it really shifted things for me in the sense that, you know, the piece of investing, when I'm investing from a place of lack, never had a good outcome. But when I invest
Yes,
from this place of desire, from the lens of I desire to be in this person's energy, it feels very different of I'm not lacking something. I deeply desire to be in this person's space and in their wealth of knowledge and their experience to enhance this for me, to enhance my experience and where I am and where I'm at with this, rather than I need this. I need this and it's going to fulfill
I love
this
that.
piece for me. That
Yeah,
created a really big shift for me when I made these investments, and even just to like pause to say, you know, is this coming from a place of lack? And if it is, not making that investment. It's really important to really
yeah,
stop ourselves
that's
in that moment.
that's gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's real gold right there. Is and understanding what that lack feels like in your body. And again, coming back to like that nervous system awareness and that personal work that kind of has to come along with that and like knowing if it's just a kind of that default reaction or if you're actually desiring to move in a certain direction and get the support to do that.
Yeah. And you'll know what that feels like in your body. It feels very different. You know,
It
just this
does.
simple thing of just like,
Yeah.
is it feeling expansive, or is it like making you kind of go into that space where you're just like, I feel like such shit about myself. And, you know, just noticing that story, that's like, I feel like the very simple way that the clarity can come. It doesn't have to be this like deep introspective moment. You can be so aware of it. Cause I think sometimes, I think why I say that is for a long time, it was very difficult for me to feel into the body when someone would ask me that, and that there was a little bit of a
Yeah.
disconnect for that. But you know,
Yeah.
when you really start to just pay attention and notice and sit with it, I think is where you get the gold and where you get the answers too.
Yeah. 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 I think you nailed it. It's so true.
One last piece that I wanted to unpack with you. I feel like we went in a whole other way that I didn't even expect, which is
I
great.
know.
But I really want to get your take on the piece around money and the financial system, because I think that's just
Right.
really powerful wisdom, and I'm just very curious on your perspective and your take on this piece.
Yeah. So part of my journey with money was like I dove into so many books. That's still mostly all that I read is like finance and personal development books. But there was a book called Money: the True Story of a Made Up Thing by Jacob Goldstein, and it was such a fascinating book. And there's lots of books on like the history of money. And what happened when I read that book is I learned about how debt was first created and like loans were first created and all the different ways that money started to show up all over the world and throughout the millennia. And I realized, oh wow, like the system kind of got like patchworked together. No one really was like, I have an idea, let's create this system with, like it just kind of, it's like a camel. And what I realized is I had this belief, and this was a belief I had to unpack, that money is corrupt, the system is rigged, Wall Street is just, we're all being manipulated. And don't get me wrong, I think that's true. And I am not here to convince you that the system is like anything but what it is. But money is very different than the system. And I feel like money is the scapegoat and gets the bad rap that the system deserves. And so when I teased those things out and I realized that getting in right relationship with money didn't mean that I was going to become corrupt, didn't mean that I was going to have to compromise on my values and stuff, then it really helped me feel more empowered.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I will ask people when they say that is, okay, if you think money is the root of all evil, or that rich people are corrupt, or like whatever the version of that belief is, I'm going to give you $1 million tomorrow, no questions asked, oh my gosh, tax free. It's going to show up in your account. What are you going to do with it? And they'll often say all these beautiful things, right? Oh, I'm going to pay off my siblings' student loans. My friend's car just broke down. I'm going to buy them a new car. I'm going to take my loved ones on a vacation. I'm going to like pay off this mortgage, or whatever. And I said, okay, what then of that is corrupt and evil? Well, it's not. Well, okay, then money is actually a really beautiful
Powerful.
vessel for good things in the world. And this is part of what drives me in the work that I do, is I want good people to have more money to wield it differently in the world. And it starts with the look, my friends. It starts with looking at your numbers, understanding your inputs and outputs, saving strategies, getting out of debt. Like, please don't give the banks any more money. I'm a big, my personal bias, I'm a big proponent of credit unions.
Yeah.
Because they are way more community focused. They are not for profit. They function exactly like a bank. You can get all of the services and like mortgages and loans and whatever, but the money goes back into the community.
Yeah. I think that is such a
Little plug
powerful
there. But
way to like like that experience or that exercise of walking someone through that is so powerful too. And this is why like I really wanted to just hear that take on it, because I think sometimes even subconsciously we don't even think that we think that there's like this corruptness. But at least for me, and what I in kind of even just experiencing in this moment, it's like the feelings that arise when you see someone who is living this lifestyle, right? I feel like sometimes like that is even a way that you start to think, or you can just recognize the beliefs that you have. And yet just that simple thing, like even in my brain, I'm just thinking of all the things that I would do with $1 million like tomorrow, you know what I mean?
right?
And it's just,
Yeah. Yeah.
it feels so good. It feels so
Yeah.
empowering to feel that,
Yeah.
to like experience that, to know that as well, to know that that's you, to know that that's coming from your core values
Yes.
is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And this is why I love social entrepreneurs. This is why I love values-based entrepreneurs, because I feel like those are the real change makers, right? People who aren't afraid to make money and do amazing things in the world with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask one last question just from what you just said.
Okay, let's go. Let's go.
It just kind of came up from what you just said about people who are not afraid to make money. I guess it comes like, this is going to be loaded. I don't even know if there's a response, but how do we become
Yeah.
unafraid to make money?
Yeah.
Shit.
That's a big one. First of all, I will say not everyone needs to be an entrepreneur, okay? What part of what I felt for so long, I got to find my purpose. I'm here to do one thing and blah blah blah. And I unexpectedly found mine mid 40s, right? Like I want to teach money now. At least it feels like
Yeah.
forever. We'll see. I'm on the journey of it. But there is no shame in having a job, because what I've realized is that at the core of it, our purpose is to just love and to be in relationship and be in community. And whether you express that as a VP in a corporate job, or a waitress, or if you love it, like if you love connecting with people, like whatever it is, there's no shame in whatever you want to do. And there's some incredible stories about people who had modest careers who made millions because they invested. Like it all comes down to that balance of what you're saving and spending.
Yeah.
So that's the first piece I will say, is that not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. If you are a purpose-led entrepreneur, then, there's certainly blocks that you are going to bump up against all the time. And that's the personal work, right? Of like recognizing what's holding you back and digging farther into those beliefs and circumnavigating your own nervous systems. And a little hack that I will caveat, I've just learned this. Usually I don't share things too much until I've learned and putting into practice, but this made so much sense to me. So when we talk about visualizing, we'll often hear about like, oh, visualize yourself with $1 million in the house with the fancy car on the vacation, like doing whatever. And the problem is that where we are now in our physiology versus where that is, it's so far away in a way.
Yeah.
So you can still want that and you can still hold that, but what you need to do is visualize yourself doing the step that it's going to take to get you there. So is the step like doing a collab with someone who you feel is a little bit bigger than you? Is the next step getting on a stage? Is the next step, you know what I mean?
Oh,
And
I
so it's
love
like
that.
bringing that visual. Yeah, it made so much sense. So this is the practice that I'm currently in, and I felt so strongly about it because I there's too much science behind the power of visualization for me to deny that it's not real. But keeping it so far out just never really worked for me, wasn't working in the way that I wanted it. Not that I haven't manifested things, but I felt like, well, if it worked so well, then we'd all be visualizing these things and have them. So this felt like a really amazing, powerful adjustment to that practice.
Exactly. And if it's what comes through is just like when it's something super, super big, it's even, you could even break it down just even a little bit more, like of, the couple of steps to break down to get to that piece too, right? Yeah, that's really powerful. I actually really love that because I think, I don't know, I believe that I'm a very visual person. And so, and yet like I can't find myself to just like put myself in this like home, even though I'm like visual. I can't do that.
Yeah.
But I could do this piece of just simply breaking it down and visualize this part and this component leading up to this like big picture. Yeah. I love
Yeah,
that.
and I'll say one last thing to bring it all home because it's that nervous system training, because there's an insane statistic about lottery winners who are bankrupt within 3 to 5 years. It's like between 70 or 80%, depending on the stat. And it's because they got so much so fast and they didn't have the nervous system training and or like the actual real life training on how to manage their money.
Yeah.
And so it's gone. And so when we think about that big thing, like, okay, yes, I want to have X amount of clients one day, but if they all come right now, I am not set up. Like my systems aren't set up. I don't have capacity. So it's really, it's a step to get you there and to pace your nervous system to slowly start to receive more and be able to hold it.
That is, oh my gosh, I'm like, that's a whole other conversation too, because I feel like, especially speaking to entrepreneurs, and I'll take that even a step further, like entrepreneurs in personal development, the coaching industry, it's just, there's this now. It's like all of it now. I want all of this now. And if you can really lean into, this is where I'm at in the sense of having the trust of what that truth piece that you just said about if all of this came at once, I don't have the systems in place to be able. And so then that allows us to put into perspective of maybe this is not happening right now because I'm not fully set up or have the capacity to do that. And it's not to say it's not anything wrong with you. That's not what I'm trying to get at. It's just giving you exactly what it is that you are meant to hold space for right now. And I think we don't bring, or at least previously, I feel like now more people are having the conversation around the nervous system regulation because I think there's a deep rooted safety piece that comes with money that we have to
Absolutely
just be able to learn what that is for us, because I think it's going to be very different for everyone, but there is a big safety piece around it.
You keep saying all these nuggets and I'm like, but yeah, and then
I know, keep going.
and it's true. And that is something that I was, when I referred earlier to like how differently I felt in my body, that safety was so key. because I'm single. And so my financial future is dependent on me right now. And for me to understand it, have my expenses in like the system where I need it to be for me to have the life I want, but also take care of the things I need to take care of and invest, like to have that all set up and to start trusting it and to sit down every month with it or every couple of weeks, whatever. Yeah, that safety and trust, whew, so important.
Yeah. And I will say
So
too
important.
that for me, I mean, I recently got married, but I will say too, I grew up very different with money. My husband grew up very different with money.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm a very curious person in the sense that I think I just started really young doing this like work and this inner work of just like,
Same.
I'm feeling very triggered
Yeah.
here. What is this? I'm just very curious to understand like why things come up for me and why I feel like this visceral response sometimes. And I will never forget this one moment where this was probably like a couple of years ago. We went out shopping and it must have been around, I want to say like, I don't know if it was like a Black Friday, I would never go out Black Friday, but like it was around that time frame where there was sales happening. And so we go out shopping, we're out with his parents, and I remember it was just like we spent like it was just spend this and then spend this. And I was just like, I was shutting down. My
Yeah.
nervous system was like, I feel very unsafe right now there was no plan. Like there was just no
Yeah.
go into the grocery store and you have the list and you get this and you leave. When I go to Costco with him, it's like a whole different ball game and a whole test of my nervous system, and also to celebrate how far
Wow.
I've come to also be like,
Yeah.
it's okay and we're safe to do this.
Yeah.
We have the
Yeah.
money to be able to spend this. Like he and our relationship has really expanded me in the money aspect too. But that safety piece is really important, and to just be very honest about it too, because I had to like when we came back to our home, I had to be like, this is very uncomfortable for me to just randomly go out, start spending all this money and just not having these conversations about it or having a plan. Like it felt very unsafe to me, but to be able to have that conversation is also such a big part of that too.
It's so key, and I really love how you presented that. And I don't know how the conversation went down, but the way you took ownership and like this experience made me uncomfortable, not you made me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
This experience made me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so that, because no one's going to enter into a conversation with you if you're telling them what to do,
Yeah.
or if you're accusing them of making you feel a certain way. Like that's going to shut down a conversation 1000%.
Yeah.
But to be able to take ownership of like, yeah, in this moment I felt this way, then it softens that engagement. And so then someone else can come to the table and not feel as threatened.
And to be able to
So
explain
well done.
too. Thanks. Thank you. That's like it's learning. It's progress. It's all learning.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But it's really powerful because then also too it invites just this conversation to also allow someone to meet you where you're at, and to
Yes.
to meet you where you're at and to be able to support you. And it's just a beautiful invitation. Yes, it's our work, but going back to that community piece, we don't have to do it by ourselves either. Thank you for listening. Make sure to leave a review and continue the conversation with me over on social media. And we'll see you in the next episode.